Hi folks, happy Friday to you. I trust that you've had a good reading week, and with that in mind, let's take a look at what I've been reading. First up is some, at least, of the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, edited by Robert Silverberg, of course. And this is an anthology because it's part one of volume one. There are another 10 or so stories in a second part. This one is almost all firmly in the Golden Age. So these are all supposedly classics. I haven't finished it all yet, but we can talk about the stories so far, since they're complete in and of themselves. The first couple, honestly, were nothing special for me. There was a Stanley Weintraub's A Martian Odyssey, and in that story, a member of the crew of a manned mission to Mars has to trek for hundreds of kilometres across the surface, which he can breathe, apparently, meeting a bunch of alien creatures. And these were among the first, by all accounts, to appear actually alien, to seem actually alien in a written story, including an apparently sentient being that helps him out. There were a couple of other stories that didn't do much for me, and then the three that did. The first of those was The Roads Must Roll by Robert Heinlein, which was probably completely preposterous from a mechanics and an engineering point of view, but I like the thrust of the story. There are giant rolling walkways with attending shops and restaurants, and those provide the means from getting to city. They've taken the place of roads. There are no cars anymore. You just jump on the moving walkway that's going to the city that you want, and then you just go with the flow. It's like a moving travelator. But the smooth running of this system is dependent on the multitude of workers who toil behind the scenes under the walkway to keep it rolling. And this is mainly then a story, from Heinlein's perspective anyway, of a pesky unionised labour getting what's coming to it. I did enjoy the imagery of the rolling roads, although I did wonder what happens at the end. You know, when the San Diego to San Francisco walkway gets to San Francisco, what happens? Does it just wrap around like a conveyor belt, moving walkways and restaurants and all? And what happens if you don't jump off in time? Do you fall off? I don't know. The moving walkways, some of them going at extremely high speed, kind of freeway speed, and reminded me of something similar in Asimov's Caves of Steel. The next was Microcosmic God by Theodore Sturgeon, which I'd heard something about before going in, and I enjoyed it. As a mad scientist who creates a form of life which progresses through the generations very quickly, developing more and more intelligence. But under his control, he institutes a policy of something like decimation. If they do something wrong or that isn't exactly what he's asked for, half the population is killed. They soon cotton on and do exactly what he asks. And using this bottled workforce, he's able to invent numerous new tools and technology, or they are, and he sells them. But ultimately, his banker tries to rip him off, and that's the guts of the tale. And the best of the bunch so far for me is Nightfall by Isaac Asimov, of course, which famously tells a tale of a familiar-seeming civilization on a planet that isn't Earth, has a handful of suns to its name, and is therefore in perpetual daylight. The people living on this planet have never seen the stars, except that they have, or at least their ancestors have. Every couple of thousand years, there's an eclipse which plunges the entire planet into darkness, at which point the stars can be seen. And there are worrying signs that in the past, this eclipse has resulted in riots and collective madness and general bad civilization-ending things. And the big question is, are they sufficiently enlightened this time around to avoid that fate? And that really is the guts of the story. And I liked it a lot. It's been a while since I've read an Asimov short story, and I did enjoy them a lot when I was younger. I don't think I've read that one before, despite it being quite a famous one. So that's all that I've read. Generally speaking, I'm finding that they don't age very well, and I suppose that's not surprising. They're 80-odd years old. But there were some delights in here. I wouldn't say they were all slam dunk, top-notch stories, despite the implication that they are, but there are two or three that I really liked, and I haven't finished it yet, so there might be one or two more as well. Next up was Grass by Sherri S. Tepper, and in this book we're at some point in the future, I'm not sure how far, humanity's on a bunch of planets, and something called the Sanctity rules the show. It's some sort of fundamentalist theocracy with an angel fixation, and there's a plague raging across human space, and there is no cure. We're all going to die. And Ringo, I was going to call him, Rigo and his family are sent to Grass and to quietly investigate the total absence of the plague there. Grass is a planet, it's covered in, wait for it, grass, many different varieties of grass. And Rigo and his wife Marjorie are horsey, fox hunting types, and they bring their horses and their jobthas and all that malarkey with them. Sure, why not? Put the horses in cryo-sleep for an interstellar journey, why not? The population of grass doesn't seem to be very large. It's mostly confined on one island near the spaceport. And what passes for aristocrats on grass live out on the ranches, out in the prairies, and they spend their time at parties and fox hunting. Yes, there are horses and foxes on grass too, sort of, and that is quite an important caveat. Sort of. Marjorie is the main character, really, not Rigo, who's a bit of a cardboard cutout, angry husband. And through Marjorie, we gradually, and I do mean gradually, Tepper spoons out the details in tantalisingly small portions. But through Marjorie, we get to understand the local setup, both the people and the wildlife. There's more to the local horses and foxes than meets the eye, and not just the obvious and rather vicious physical differences. I really like the vibe of the book. The wildlife is interesting, and the local population, at first apparently subservient to the aristos, the ranchers, are great. And even the priests and the other religious orders are considerably more nuanced than they initially appear. The book is a giant onion, and Tepper peels away the layers one atom at a time. And I think that might have been frustrating or even annoying, but I think Tepper does it with a deft enough touch. And I was certainly interested and engaged throughout. I thought it was a very interesting book, and I'm pleased to have read it. Next is A Wrinkle in the Skin by John Christopher, and this is a book that I swallowed whole one night during the week when I was just unable to sleep. As you might be able to detect in my voice, I've had a stinking cold all week and I just couldn't sleep. So John Christopher is the author of Tripods, and folks like me of a certain age might remember the TV show from the early 80s, but more notably perhaps, he's the author of The Death of Grass. And in that book, he imagines a world where our food supply is devastated by a virus that wipes out all cereal crops, plus, of course, just grazing land for livestock. And things quickly go south. In A Wrinkle in the Skin, he once again finds a way to end life as we know it on planet Earth. In the case of A Wrinkle in the Skin, there are devastating global earthquakes that pancake every building and squish everyone within. And all that happens in the opening pages. Everybody is dead. Of course, this would be a very short book if it really was everybody. But near as damn it, everybody. Our protagonist is Matthew. He's a divorced tomato grower on Guernsey, which is in the Channel Islands. And if you're not familiar with the geography, it's actually much closer to France than to the UK mainland, but is... Well, it's not technically part of the UK, but is a UK crown dependency. Anyway, Matthew happens to be outside when this megaquake strikes. He's a bit battered about, but mostly unscathed. He starts rescue attempts and finds, mostly dead people, until he finds Billy, a young lad who is now his new sidekick. A significant side effect of the megaquake is that the surface of the Earth has changed so much that the seas have retreated. The seabed has raised and the water's drained off elsewhere, leaving the English Channel dry, which is handy because Matthew needs to go to England to see if he can find his daughter who is visiting there. And that trip through that much changed landscape is the guts of the story, really. The things that they see, the people that they meet, the dangers that they face, including a stranded freighter with a captain that's slowly gone insane. And like any good end-of-the-world tale, there are bands of roving survivors, some of them goodies and some baddies. With nearly everyone else dead, it seems highly implausible that Matthew will find his daughter alive, but that hope is what drives his story in the book. Having read The Death of Grass earlier this year, I think this book was less grim than The Death of Grass. There was less desperation, less complacency, and the disaster wasn't as slow motion as it is in The Death of Grass, and millions of people don't starve. It was instantaneous and completely unexpected, a cosmic throw of the dice, totally changing the world forever. There's the expected scavenging for scarce tinned food. There are none of the mod cons. There's no electricity, there's no nothing. And if you're lucky, you get caught up with a resourceful and civilized bunch of survivors, or if not, you could just try to steal what they have. But that's really all that's left. So I enjoyed it. I ploughed through. I hadn't intended to read the whole thing in one sitting, but that's what happened. I really enjoyed it. I probably am guilty of skim reading it a little bit, but it was fun while it lasted, and it certainly served a purpose for me when I was unable to do anything else productive in the middle of the night. So tell me, what have you read this week? Is there anything that you particularly recommend? Then do let us know in the comments down below. Channel stuff next then, briefly. Subs are at 6,348, which has crept up by 10 against this time last week. But if you're one of those 10, or if you've just stumbled drunkenly across my channel today for the first time, then a huge welcome to you. I'm John, and I focus on collecting, reading, and waffling on about science fiction books, old and new. Comment of the week this week is from Barbara, who gave me some constructive feedback, which is always nice to receive. It reminded me a little bit of the notations that my kids had to use when they were at school. They used to write WWW for what went well, and then EBI for even better if, and they had to give some comments on each. And Barbara clearly knows my kids' teachers, because that's exactly what she's done here. My summaries are great, excellent even, she says. So thank you, Barbara. And then we're into even better if territory. I apparently could be more granular, more analytic, more precise, and I'm sure Barbara's quite right, but I suspect that might be beyond my talents. Still, I should maintain a growth mindset, so maybe I'm just not ready to do that yet. Barbara, thank you for taking the time to leave a comment, and to all of you that have done the same during the week, I do really appreciate it. Let's take a quick look at what was on the channel in the last week. Just the one video, because of the man flu. On Sunday there was Wired for Desire, which was a sort of compare and contrast of two books that I read this year, both involving sex robots of one kind or another. Both quite different books, so I thought it was interesting to compare them, and about 5 other people agreed and watched that video. And then that was your lot for the rest of the week. As I mentioned, I've just had a nasty cold / flu all week, which floored me for a few days, so nothing else was forthcoming. On the book buying front, I've not been idle, despite having a bit of man flu. There were a couple of charity shop finds, courtesy of my daughter, who was out and about and sent me a picture of the shelves at an Oxfam bookshop, and there were a couple of books that I fancied, so she got them for me. There's an Eric Brown hardback winging its way to me that I found on eBay, and then there are a couple of books that I found on the PS2 website, which is an adjacent site to the PS Publishing website and contains all of their excess or legacy stock, but those haven't arrived yet. And then just last night, breaking news if you like, I got an email, as I'm sure many other people did, from NewCon Press, another small press publisher here in the UK, announcing an enormous summer sale. They did have one a little bit earlier in the year, but this is much more extensive, it seems. They're having a massive warehouse clear out, and they're taking a in bulk approach to this. So you can't buy individual books, but you can buy a bundle of 5 books for just £4. There's a total of £4, so less than £1 each, 80p each. And they're not just any books either. They're all signed limited edition hardbacks that they've had on their shelves for a while. And if you want, you can buy more than one batch of 5, and they'll ensure that there aren't any duplicates across however many sets you buy. You can either buy a science fiction batch, or a fantasy batch, or a horror batch, or a mixed genre batch. And for those prices, I definitely recommend you should have a go. Even with shipping, it's very reasonably priced. I bought 4 lots of 5, so 20 books in total, and the total cost, including shipping, of those was just over £1.15, I think it was, a book. So I think you really can't go wrong. And those are on their way, or will be at some point soon. They obviously haven't arrived yet. But until then, the to-be haul pile stands at a modest 9 books. Let's take a quick look ahead. On Sunday, there will be August's book haul video. That's recorded and uploaded. I just got to do the thumbnail. That will definitely happen. And that includes the results of a vacation bookshop frenzy in what is billed as Scotland's national book town, where my wife and I visited a few weeks back. I also have the footage, as yet unedited, of my chat with Gareth Powell. So it's possible I'll get to that editing this weekend, in which case that might well appear during the week as well. So what will I be reading in the coming week? I thought I might finish Cal during the week. I got through the bulk of it, probably 80% last weekend while I was out running and what have you. But the man flu prevented much in the way of audiobook listening. So I still have 20% of that to go. I should finish that by this time next week. And then in actual book, I've got The Labyrinth Key by Howard Hendricks, which I've only just started. I've read the first chapter or 2. And I don't know how well I'm going to get on with this. It's a sort of a techno thriller, Blake Crouchy type thing, only a bit more sophisticated perhaps. But we'll see. And after that, I don't know, I'll just see what takes my fancy. As always, thanks very much for watching. Have a great weekend, and until next time, goodbye for now.